but it wasn't on the ballot. And in fact, this was kind of some of the thinking in Colorado that, wow, we could have a real impact in a close presidential election. And in fact, this idea was leading in the polls as they were getting close to the determination of how to vote on it. However, it started to slip the other way as more and more people started to see Colorado as a battleground. And the general feeling was, wow, you know, we actually could have more impact with our full electoral votes as a battleground. And so they ended up voting against that in the population, and it never came into place. So, you know, this is one of the mechanisms that effectively has been a part of that, and of course Colorado has become one of those battleground states, so it's not really a coincidence that the Democrats decide to convene there for the first time in about 100 years, or Barack Obama accepts the nomination to be the Democratic Party candidate, or Democratic Party nominee for President of the United States. So, you know, whatever advantages or disadvantages the district system may provide, I also realize that the League of Women Voters is not supportive of such a path to the Electoral College reform. In my understanding, the League seems to feel that it doesn't reflect the ideal of a one-person, one-vote outcome, and one that would be universal across the United States. And again, you could look at some of the shortcomings of such a system. A lot of these House district lines are drawn in partisan ways that in some ways can almost ensure more of a breakdown than even the states do nowadays. So that obviously would open up a whole other kind of question about representation and politics and everything that goes into drawing those district lines too. But what the district system does provide us, when we look at states like Maine and Nebraska, is the idea that it is within states' authority to determine how electors are awarded. Indeed, the U.S. Supreme Court has further characterized the authority of the states over the manner of awarding electoral votes as plenary and exclusive. So the constitutional wording as the legislature thereof may direct contains no restriction on the state's exercise of their power with respect to their electors, which brings us to the National Popular Vote Compact. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time going into the background of the compact. I realize that you have provided such information to your members, and our purpose here is to consider whether or not the League of Women Voters should endorse such a path to reform. But it really is worth going over some of the compact's recent success and challenges, its strengths and weaknesses, before we have a broader discussion on the question facing us here today and into the near future. There's been, as I mentioned, there have been numerous efforts to reform or even scrap the Electoral College over time, but this is a different kind of attempt, and it's relatively new. In many ways, it was the brainchild of a very successful high-tech entrepreneur who made a lot of money, and one of the ways he made a lot of money was developing the scratch-off lottery ticket that they were using in California. And in the sort of grand tradition of wealthy entrepreneurs seeking reform in America, the NPV was introduced. And it was introduced in early 2006. And in a short amount of time, it's garnered significant support from activists, groups, and legislators, but it's also faced a lot of opposition. And the NPV sees an opportunity to move toward a national popular vote system without constitutional amendment, first by using Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, but also Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, also known as the Compact Clause. It permits states to enter into legally enforceable contractual obligations to undertake agreed joint action with other states, and interstate compacts are typically used. Should we allow them to sing? They're not singing. Actually, tomorrow is my birthday, so I guess it works out. I thought you were all surprising me here.
And hired a chorus.
That's right, the Rotary Club chorus.
It seemed like the moment to stop you.
Okay, well, it worked out. In any case, but interstate compacts are typically used to address problems that concern more than one state, and the states which are affected enter into a contract, which regulates their actions. It ensures uniform response by the states to address mutual concerns. And these contracts are typically enacted through the passage of identical legislation by the compact states. So by relying on two constitutional components, the idea is this. State elections officials in all states participating in the plan would award their electoral votes to the presidential candidate who receives the largest number of popular votes in all 50 states in the District of Columbia. And the plan would take effect only when it's been enacted by states collectively possessing a majority of electoral votes. That's the 270 vote threshold. That corresponds essentially to a majority of the people of the United States. And again, the idea is the National Popular Vote Compact seeks to guarantee the winner of the National Popular Vote wins the presidential election. And the compact contains a 6-month blackout period during which no state can withdraw from it. So the blackout period starts on July 20th. So it provides an element of flexibility, but not chaos. And then it runs through the January 20th inauguration. And again, it's a contract, so it's settled compact law, settled constitutional law that has certain restrictions on withdrawal. Again, very common in interstate compacts, enforceable because the U.S. Constitution prohibits a state from impairing any obligation to contract. So, as this works? Well, since passage of the National Popular Vote Compact, it's actually been signed into law in 4 states. Maryland, New Jersey, Hawaii, and Illinois. So they're on their way. They have 50 of the 270 electoral votes that are necessary to activate the compact. It's also been introduced in about 15 other states, and some have passed committee, others have passed one or the other house. And it has a lot of editorial support from some pretty significant newspapers, the New York Times, the LA Times. Now think about where all of these big papers are. Boston Globe, right? They've all jumped on board as well, but it has certain detractors, and many within the very state governments, legislatures that would be called upon to pass this kind of legislation. My home state, I guess this has become my home state, but my original home state of California actually passed it in the Assembly and the state senator. Our current governor, the current governor of California out there, Arnold Schwarzenegger, vetoed it. He vetoed the bill. And essentially his argument was he couldn't support an electoral process that could potentially disregard the popular votes within his own state. Now, as I've mentioned, California tends to go Democratic. He's a Republican governor, although he's married to a Kennedy, but nevertheless, he was saying he was looking out for the interests of California and the voters within California, and thus couldn't sign off on such a bill. And this would probably be the viewpoints of those who may not adopt this as well. Assume the system was in play in 2008. And John McCain manages to win the national popular vote by about 100,000 over Barack Obama. But he loses, if we look at the traditional electoral college map, he loses by over 100 electoral college votes. And in places like New York State by 25 points. Under this compact, if New York State was a member of this compact, New York voters would then give their electoral votes to John McCain, even though he lost substantially in this state. And this is something that's pending action in the New York legislature as we speak, which brings us to the questions facing the League of Women Voters. And again, I understand that the League of Women Voters doesn't support reform of the electoral college system on a state-by-state basis, say the Maine, Nebraska district system, because again, there's a belief there should be uniformity across the nation. The systems used to elect the president. So wouldn't this approach conflict with such a perspective if it relies on only a 270 electoral vote majority to go into effect? What are the states that decide not to enter the compact? And there's no guarantee that such an arrangement would rein in other league concerns such as campaign finance spending. In fact, such a system would probably increase spending dramatically. It might encourage more third-party candidates to enter the race, but it wouldn't necessarily provide them with any better platform to win. What it would probably do is ensure the major party candidates of less than a majority in presidential elections, because third-party candidates, and again, this could be one of the benefits to it, because now more third-party candidates would be in the races and getting more of the vote in a national popular vote system, but that would also take away from the votes that would thus go to the Democratic or Republican candidates. So what you'd probably see would be Democratic or Republican Party candidates winning in 40% or something, 40 points in that area, as opposed to getting over a national popular vote majority.